the purpose is for educational purpose. And if there may be some local housing that's on the screen and it's for educational purposes only. So, but before that, Brian Kostelic, did he leave already? Nope. Why? Oh, you went right in. Well, this presentation? Earmuffs. Bill, what he was discussing about before about this nationwide bus and where our little community of Neopit had a huge role in that, and some of our grassroots boots on the ground grandmas are present with us, and I just wanted to recognize them. If they can please stand. With their determination and dedication with the grassroots and providing the law enforcement with information, whether it was hearsay, third party, it was the information that they received that what we would do is we'd pass on to Brian Kostelic and with the DCI and ATF and I believe like FBI and
DEA.
DEA, that's what I was looking for, DEA. And with all that, and with all that information, just even the smallest information that we provided, one small information one day led to a big bag full of information that was given down to DEA and DCI. So, and again, I just wanted to recognize that, you know, with your hard work and dedication, that's, you know, nationwide throughout the United States, that we made a difference. So, thank you. Up next is going to be Josh Law and the local drug trends.
Like Rich said, I don't have faces or anything like that. Maybe some houses are when I go through the cases. You guys and gals might remember hearing it when it would be posted in law enforcement news when it comes to Facebook and stuff. Again, we're not here to ridicule, not here to embarrass, but the way I do my presentations in the past, instead of going through PowerPoints, what I do is I go through a lot of the cases that I've actually been a part of, or some of the patrol officers that they've come across in traffic stops, because I thought it would be, you know, you got guys and men like Kostelic that deal with a lot of stuff across the country, and then what's it look like when it comes here? You see a lot of the scary stuff on the news or Facebook, social media, what have you. But I think it's a good thing to show you what we're actually doing on traffic stops or searches of houses. Some of the stuff, there's some cases involving certain drugs that I won't show in here, such as some of the heroin stuff, only because that involved some deaths and I couldn't put those kind of pictures up on here. But I will talk about them, I will discuss them. My presentations are very informal. Stop me in the middle of them, raise your hand, ask questions, give comments, and that's how I go about it. So I'm just gonna go through a couple of cases that I've been a part of, okay? Okay, so one of the things I wanna go back to was the boots on the ground with the grandmas was one of our major things that we dealt with a few years back was our synthetic problem, and where that led with the situation that Brian Kostelic was talking about. Obviously, one of the major areas that were hit in our community was Neopit. Neopit got probably hit the hardest. Obviously, everybody knows that, you know, the nickname for Neopit was Zombie Town, Zombie Land, and we were getting a lot of outcry from local community members of do something, and I believe that's where Boots on the Ground came in, because what they learned, I think, when we would talk with them was that, you know, nobody wants to talk to law enforcement, but they'll talk to you guys and tell you guys information, and they were kind of like a third party. So one of the things that we do in law enforcement when it comes to doing drug investigation is there's a lot of factors that come into it. One of the things involving the synthetic problem that we dealt with in Neopit, there was a lot of people that were using it and a lot of people that were nickel and dime selling it between each other. But there was one main person, one main house that a lot of this was sourcing out of. And when it comes to doing a drug investigation, I just want to put it out there that this one person not only took me, the FBI, and several of the other officers, this took 4 months just to do for one person. And the reason why I mention that is because I know there's a lot of community members that don't know how law enforcement functions, or lack thereof sometimes, that why isn't this faster, why isn't this getting done quicker? So, go ahead. All right, sorry, yeah, you can go right there, that's fine. Right here is a package of 14 grams of synthetic marijuana. And the reason I'm showing this slide is that this person here, I got a knock on my door at work, and this person came in and sat down with me and began to cry and just said, you know, I'm sick of the synthetic, I'm sick of this, people that are on it. I came home, and I believe it was their grandfather. They come out to the back, open the back door, and Grandpa was in the backyard seizuring, laying out in the middle of the day. She had to help Grandpa get up. After Grandpa got out of the seizure, Grandpa had another friend there that they had a conversation with. You know, I'm sure there was, according to her, some words that were exchanged to stay away from my grandpa, etc. But Grandpa was hooked. Grandpa needed this every day. This bag right here, you can't really see it right now, but the green leafy substance, it has some other discoloration, like purple stuff in here. This is an example of what was found at the shop in Milwaukee. So these people here were traveling to the shop in Milwaukee, meeting with the 3 people that Kostelic was just talking about, get their shipment, come up here and sell it. This bag here was just $100 for just this one bag. So this person, you can go through it. This person came to me and said, I want to do whatever I can. What can I do? So I flat out told him, I said, right now I know what house you're talking about. I have already been gathering information. I've been documenting information. I said, I need your help. Are you willing to buy for this person for me? And this person said, yes, I'm done. I don't want to see my grandfather seizuring out in the back door, in the back of the house. So along with me and FBI and this person, we were able to set up a buy. We gave him some money. We wired him up, and we followed him on the transaction, and we watched him do the transaction. Like it was nothing. We paid $100 for that one bag. On average, after watching this person and documenting, they were making from 5 sales a day to 20 sales a day. On average to $50 a bag to $100 a bag. So just, I mean, you can do the math, and it was consistent. It was, for them 4 months, it was consistent. So we did we ended up getting enough information, and we decided that we had enough, and I applied for a search warrant with the courts. We ended up doing a search warrant on the house, and this is what we found when we entered the house, along with the individual. This was packaged up right next to the window. Each bag was about the same size as the ones I showed you, and I believe that's just a couple $100 right there. But then we're ready for sale. They were trying to stuff it in the couch when we pulled up. I guess they got nervous. But we found this other package on top. We found the top package underneath the couch, and they were spread out all over. They were trying to dump them. And again, each of those were, I mean, if you count them, I think it was like 100, or excuse me, about 28 packages that we found in total. So you figure 2,000. And just like Kostelic said, where comes drugs and people that, you know, do this kind of stuff, comes guns. This gun was loaded by their bed next to their money. During an interview with them, the gun was only for protection because she didn't want people breaking in her house. When asked what they would break in her house for, they didn't really give an answer, but in my opinion, I think she was nervous about people breaking her house because they knew how much money she would stuff in the house. So after we dealt with that, we ended up getting a federal and tribal prosecution with them. She's currently in federal prison, and then when she comes back, she has to return to tribal and do her tribal sentence as well. When the synthetic bust happened, we had a conversation with some of the people because it did stop. A lot of it stopped at that point, and we told them that one of the next things that are coming is going to be some harder drugs, because unfortunately, you know, this person here she was actually, I guess you would call, the perfect drug dealer. She didn't use. She didn't spend any of her money on on drugs to use, so she made a lot of money. After that, everybody still needed to get high, and that's when we start running into the meth, into the heroin. That summer, right after that, people were associating people that were on meth with, hey, the ish is still around, the synthetic is still around. Well, we came to find out that we weren't finding any traffic stops, any houses we were going in. We weren't finding any synthetic. We were finding meth and heroin and pills. So again, that one right there, that took 4 months for that. The next one is just recently happened. When I talk about it, you guys will probably be informed. But there's a couple reasons I put this one in my slide that I want to talk about. It deals with meth, it deals with marijuana, and it deals with needles. And also kids. So this one here, again, another house, another person that kept coming on our radar that people would contact us, but you know, at this time, this is where the meth in our community was getting very strong. A lot of people were very paranoid, scared to help us, other than just to say, you need to watch this house, you need to watch this place. Well, what happened here was that police officers got a call, and they said there was a domestic disturbance occurring. They could hear a male and a female fighting, arguing. So when the officers showed up, they walked up to the door, and they could hear a female screaming as if being assaulted. So the officers entered the house and ended up detaining a male and separating a female. I get a call from the on-duty sergeant and said, you know, you need to come over here and check this out because it reeks really, really bad of marijuana. Like really, really bad. So I said, okay. So I go to the house, and I'm probably, the picture doesn't do justice, but the porch to my truck is maybe 15 feet. I got out of my car, and I could smell the marijuana from my squad. So the reason I bring this up is that there's a couple things that I know the talk in the community with marijuana is it's not that bad, it's better than meth, it's better than heroin. I don't know what people's preferences are with it, you know, and honestly I don't care unless the legislature and everybody changes the laws around it. There's nothing I can do about it, it's still illegal. But what made me upset about it being marijuana was when I pulled up, there was a 2-year-old walking up and down the stairs of the house with some aunties and stuff. And my thought process was, if I can smell it from where I was at, and this little guy is on top of the porch, and he's living in this house, that's a problem for me. He's 2 years old, let his lungs have a chance, give him a chance to breathe, you know? So I could smell it real bad, so what I end up doing is we end up going back to the department, I end up writing a search warrant for the house based on this, and we end up doing a search of the house. You can go through it. So search warrants and drug search warrants seem to be very common, not only in our community, but outside our community. When Kostelik was talking, he was talking about needles and stuff like that. So you go through a house and you'll come across things that start making you suspicious. You start coming across scales, you start coming across pipes, etc. So this right here, this was found in the kitchen, or excuse me, that's the floor, yeah. What it is an actual, it's a device. You put it on your wall, and it looks like an outlet, but you can open it up. It's a fake outlet, and you can dump some, you know, bags of whatever you want. It's kind of to throw off the police officers. So you start seeing scales, and it's really, you start seeing baggies. You see the baggies everywhere. You see more scales. You know, I don't know what he's packaging, but at this point, but I don't think it's for anything good. In little baggies, little Ziploc baggies, scales everywhere. So, go back to the letter real quick. So, one of the things we do when we look through for drugs and we see stuff, we'll look for ledgers, we'll look for letters, and what's, you know, it gets really invasive, but in these letters were actually prison letters from some of his drug friends that were telling him what not to do, what to do, etc. when the cops come, and who's hot, who's not hot, meaning that who the police are onto. So he was getting a lot of information from the people in prison, some of his buddies. So going through the house, you find in the bedroom, go back. You can find in the bedroom there's a little baggie right there. We end up testing that. That's some meth, crystallized meth right there, and they crush it up. We'll go through what he was doing with it. So that's a big plastic bag. You can go next. When we pulled it out, it's a gallon-sized bag. It was literally, it had to be just recently emptied because it stunk like there was some marijuana that was just in there. So one of the things we started noticing after that, when we started doing searches, is we started noticing capped, used, and uncapped used syringes all over the house. So then that just kind of sparks us more of what else could be in the house. So we kept getting the odor from this, like we were all sitting in the bedroom here, and we're like a bunch of dogs. We could just smell it. It was so strong. I don't know how to describe it, but it was just really strong. Then we all came down. Our noses all put us down here at the bottom of this dresser, and we grabbed that lockbox there. Lockbox was full. We couldn't get into it. He ended up going to jail for the domestic situation. Ended up having a thing of keys on him and was trying to get rid of his keys to a family member. But luckily we found this and we snagged the keys, and then his keys end up opening up the lockbox. So again, you find stuff under the bed, baggies, scales, money rolled up. And we kept going around the house, and we would go to the kitchen, bedroom. We kept finding needles everywhere. This needle here is downstairs in the basement on the rafters. He would go down there when he would make a fire, I guess. So the other thing too is, if he came and told me after we interviewed him that he wasn't selling or doing any type of drug activity, this is a clear indication of him selling, in my opinion. This here is what we call ledgers. And if you look at it, it talks about an ounce of marijuana. At the time it was weed. We knew it would be weed. An ounce. It goes through him buying it, breaking it down, how much we profit, how much we return, and how much they resell, etc., etc. So, you know, unless he's just doing a crazy math problem, I don't know. So again, you go through the house and we started finding the needles everywhere around the house. Kept finding empty baggies. So after this was all said and done, we went back to the PD and we opened up the, oh, let's go back to this really quick. So one of the things too is that we find out when we go into houses is that there's always tons of phones. No matter what drug house, search warrant, or car that involves drugs I've ever done, there's always more than 2 or 3 phones. And they're burner phones, minute phones, Wi-Fi phones. You'll see people at the casino, you'll see people here in the parking lot using the Wi-Fi just so their phones activate, and they will talk and communicate through Facebook or whatever text apps that they have. iPads, whatever electronic device they have. We always see that. I've had the same phone number for, 15 years. And these guys got 3 of them in a month. So we opened it up and ended up finding this. So it ended up coming to 120 grams, I think, maybe more, of packaged and about to be packaged marijuana. So a quick lesson on tribal law when it comes to marijuana. Marijuana is still illegal on the reservation. There's a misperception, especially when you go into the high school, you'll get in arguments with teenagers who will tell you it's legal now. It's not legal. And what the tribe did is they decriminalized it. It's no different than a underage ordinance ticket. You know, if you're a certain age and you got under a certain amount of marijuana on you, you can receive a citation. But if you're a certain age and it's over that certain amount, which is over 25 grams, it's criminal. You can still be arrested, you can still be charged. But no matter what amount you have on you, whether you have 100 and some grams or 10 grams, you cannot sell it. Once you start, or we can prove that you guys or somebody is selling it, that's an automatic arrest, that's an automatic crime. And people have that misperception that they can just walk around with it, and I don't know where they got that from, but that's, I'm trying to tell as many people it's not It's not legal. The packaged crystal meth, what I found out was, what I learned, it was what they do with the crystal meth. Some people will snort it, some people will smoke it, and some people will put it in the syringes, liquefy it with a little bit of water, dilute it a little bit, and then they start injecting, and that's where, Costello said, you'll see like the funny spots in the head and whatnot. A lot of people I've come across of his arms, or there's the toes or the legs that they'll inject it in. Again, my comments on my statement when it comes to marijuana is it's not illegal, and you have a 2-year-old that's in the house. If you're gonna smoke it, at least go outside and don't bring it in the house. The little guy still gotta breathe it in. He's still gotta breathe. He's still growing. Yeah, just showing that it's positive. Any comments about that one? Needles.
I have a question.
Sure.
So if it's decriminalized, but you said these kids are walking around with, openly with marijuana,
I wouldn't say openly, but they're walking around.
is it still confiscated then?
Oh yes, it'll be confiscated.
It's illegal.
It's illegal. It'll be confiscated. I
They
mean,
just get a citation?
yeah, depends on the age. They'll get a citation. We'll confiscate it and we'll destroy it, and Dion will get it and she'll destroy it.
Right.
So, I'm gonna talk about this one. This one, everyone, I'm pretty sure a lot of people have heard about this one. This is there's 3 with another package, about 4 packs of meth right here. So this one right here, I'll talk and explain for one reason, is to the situation we deal with law enforcement when it comes to females. So this case here, I got called about a situation that might be occurring at our casino. They told me that some people are looking to come here. They use the Wi-Fi and they're looking to try to sell drugs here. They use the Wi-Fi and they're looking to try to sell drugs here. I contacted some the officers I was working with, kind of put them on the situation, and they were able to watch these 2 people through casino surveillance, with the help of casino surveillance. After we watched them, we determined a couple things. One, they were in fact trying to sell. They were out with their phones. They were messaging people. We were able to watch their text messages from surveillance, to have people meet them there and talking about drug talk. And 2, that one of them had a warrant. So either way, we were going to stop these guys to see what was going on. They ended up pulling out the casino, and we ended up stopping them. So we approached the vehicle, pulled her out, and we ended up talking with them, told them what was going on. They told me right to my face they weren't selling, they weren't doing anything at the casino, don't know what I'm talking about, don't have nothing on me. So we ended up arresting for the search warrant, and I actually brought my female officer to come over because I wanted them to pat down, because unfortunately with females, we could still pat down being a male, but I didn't feel comfortable who the female was, how she was acting, so we requested Dion to come over. We ended up patting her down, and Dion told me, she goes, I'm pretty sure that she has something in her genital area. So I ended up talking to her again and just saying, look, we're going to jail. We're going to be able to look. When you go to jail, you need to tell me if something's there so we can go to the hospital if need be. She told me nothing was there, and I said, well, you got a pretty big bulge for being a girl, so I said, I don't know how else to say it, but that's how, I don't know. I mean, it's 2019. I did not want to upset her, but I knew who she was, so. And then she said, all right, Josh, it's in there. I said, all right, well, I'm not touching it. We're going to the hospital. So I bring that up because I am pretty positive that we have not gotten a lot of drugs because of situations like that. And unfortunately, there's a lot of females that are doing that for their own reasons, or a lot of females are bullied into it by male counterparts that will force them to do it. So we end up taking them down. And I stayed down there with the doctor. I stayed out of the room. The doctor ended up coming out and giving me the plastic bag, and they were there with the packaging. As you can see, every packaging is different. Some people have labels on their packaging, some people don't. But here specifically, these little Ziploc baggies had a bunch of little hearts on them. They were all wrapped up along with that plastic bag. and we were able to get it out there to test it to show that it was positive. You try to explain to them how dangerous that could be. If it breaks inside the vaginal cavity, you're gonna get sick real fast depending on what's in this stuff. So, it's happening out there, it's happening in our community. People are doing the stuff that you see. I hear a lot of things where they'll say, well, that doesn't happen here. That doesn't happen here on the reservation. And if I could sit down and tell the things that I've seen in the houses and the traffic stops and the guys' stories that we've come across, I think people would be very shocked. That's why I'm glad we're doing this forum and I can be able to show community things and traffic stops and houses, etc., of what we're dealing with in our community. This is just a little sample of it. We are dealing with the meth. We've had heroin overdoses, deaths. We've had verified fentanyl death here on the reservation. So it is here. And I tell the community we need the community as much as you need us. We're not going to rest our way out of this, but we are dealing with it. So I only had a few minutes last time, so I'm probably going to be finished up right now, but any questions or comments or anything? Nope. Well, thank you guys for your time.
With that, and with the little time that Josh did have, it's going to kind of go into our plain view, our hidden in plain sight. So we're going to probably go into this, and I'm going to have Darla come up. Darla? No. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through this. We're going to call it a teenage bedroom.
So this is prevention, awareness about what a parent or loved one, guardian can do to kind of just get some warning signs that something might be going on. This particular room that we used as our example came from a young boy who started drinking in the 6th grade, progressed to using heroin as he got older, and then his parents were able to get him some assistance. But his mother and he went and created this kind of room so that they could show community members, because he was telling her a lot of the things that she didn't see. She'd come in his room every day, she didn't really notice things. So he helped her kind of create this list of items that you can set up and show parents. These are things that you wouldn't really think to look at or think to question. So that's what they did, and we asked PD if they had some local drug paraphernalia evidence that they could give us. I won't touch any of that, but it's in the room as well. So if you do come and take a peek, we ask that you don't touch anything, because some of it those are items that you guys need to take back and keep secure.
Yes.
So just another disclaimer is that, if you're noticing some of these things in your kids' bedroom, it's not to say that you need to question them and say, are you doing drugs? What's going on? A big piece of your parent-child relationship is trust. So this is something that, if you notice your child is in sports and maybe they quit doing sports, maybe they're more secluded, maybe their behavior's just changing. These are things that you can kind of keep a watch for, keep a lookout for, to see if maybe you can link it to some of their behavior. A big thing that I can say is question. If you notice different behavior, or start conversations with them about, I noticed that you're really tired lately, what's going on with that, and become a part of their day, a part of their routine. That's a big part of monitoring what's in your kids' room as well. Just being comfortable talking to them, that relationship. So I'll start with some of the items, and then I'll start with our items, and then I'll let Officer talk about hers. So one thing that you can look for, and it seems innocent, and it's just clothing that has alcohol or drugs on it. So you see them purchasing and they want to buy these things. Again, it's not an indicator if your kid is wearing, Budweiser pants that they're using or drinking, but it's a conversation starter. So why do you want to buy that? What is it? Something that is cool at school? Are you just questions? You can question why they want to purchase these types of items. Another item that we have is incense, or we have canisters of like Febreze spray. So this is usually an indicator that they're trying to cover up some kind of scent that's in the room. You know, again, not saying that if they have that in there that it's going to be an item that they're using for that purpose. Another item that you're going to want to look for are toilet paper rolls, and if they're stuffed with fabric softeners, it's a way to mask the smell of either smoking, whether it be cigarettes or marijuana. So just watch if you see a lot of these little toilet paper rolls and a lot of fabric softeners laying around. Those are ways that they can mask those smells. So we've got some just money that's rolled up, used to store items, those types of things to look for. There's also a list that I have that I can send you if you're interested that has all of these items you can actually buy on Amazon. So just be mindful that, you know, parents placing orders for kids on Amazon. I really like this hat. One of the other things, we don't have them yet, but I wanted to make sure that they were ordered through the tribe because I don't want to order them with my own credit card. But there's apparel that's sold specifically to hide and conceal marijuana, other types of drugs. So there's hoodies. This isn't one, but they usually have like a little marijuana leaf on them, or they're more just plain Jane. There's little pockets inside. They're little tiny pockets that you can hide stuff in. There's hats that they sell. Those will usually have like a little marijuana leaf on them, and they'll have a little pocket either in the brim or inside the hat that is a little pocket where you can stash certain types of drugs and those types of things. So there's also these little dust canisters. Sometimes these are used for like puffing and that kind of thing. Otherwise, there's false bottoms in cans. So, and these you can buy on Amazon as well. And there's multiple, you know, I believe Mr. Costello was talking about the California safes. Is that what he was calling them? Mm-hmm. I didn't know that till today, but they're little false bottoms that you unscrew, and they're Arizona cans, you know, the Arizona tea cans, the larger ones. So there's ones on Amazon that you can order like that. There's Aquafina bottles that have the false bottoms in them. I can't remember what the other one was, but again, if you want to see the list, ask me, I can send it to you. If you want to create a room like this, for that purpose, I can send it to you so you can see what to kind of watch for. There's also little toys that we weren't able to get, but they're grinders for grinding up marijuana, and I don't know if you have any that you brought. But the one I saw in the presentation that I watched was a little Pokemon ball, and it looks like a toy, like a kid's toy, but if you open it up, it's actually a grinder. So just really watch for those things, especially, again, if you're noticing differences in your kid's behavior. It's shocking to me. I didn't realize that they made those types of things in kid-themed items. So again, just be cautious.
And then some of the items that I have brought from the Trevor Police Department, they're actual items that we did find in houses here on the reservation. So they're going to be more of you know, what we found locally. I guess some of the things is you've seen, or you may have seen, are the little plastic baggies with little symbols on them. Each dealer usually has their own symbol or their specific symbol, so we would see different, we've seen joker faces, we've seen money signs, you know, just baggies everywhere. Or even if they're packaging, they're going to be, or selling, they're going to be more like this in the bulk. Other things that we usually find, along with, you know, the dollars are the pieces of paper rolled up. We do find pieces of glass that we use if it's not an actual pipe. We do find different where they have the burnt ends on them. Another thing that we find in rooms are plates. Now, I'm not saying that, you know, your child is going into his room with a plate that means he's doing drugs. It could be just, you know, on Fortnite, you know, dungeon. But that is a big thing that I've seen in a lot of search warrants are plates everywhere in the room. Obviously, without food stains, they might have maybe even burnt substance, yellow substance on there. Another thing that we find a lot of is what Costelli was talking about are the bindles, and they're little pieces of paper like this. So we find these a lot everywhere. Obviously, this one's made out of a casino mailer. They could either be like this, which is, they probably used it before already, if it's open. You might find some that are packaged up that might still have substance in them. Another thing that we do find are the orange tips everywhere. They'll leave them laying right where they started using it, so we find that a lot. Another thing is we do find a lot of stuff inside of dressers. A lot of our stuff we find in dressers, so they could be spoons. Usually they have mirrors. They hide scales inside of the dressers. We find that stuff. We find iPhone plates in dressers. Just, you know, they hide them wherever they can. You know, more scales. Let's see. I don't know exactly where Josh hid all this stuff. One thing that we do find, spoons. I don't want to open this up because there is white substance on it, but we do find spoons that are either have burnt on the bottom or they have white stuff on the top. And find that stuff. Usually you will find a lot of boxes like this that just have a bunch of anything in it, you know, whatever it is. Like this one is tattoo equipment. Again, mixed in with your smoking devices. You know, if someone's gonna go get a tattoo. They have straws in here. Usually we do find a lot of boxes, a lot of containers that hold the stuff. So if you guys see containers, another container that we did find at a residence was a little hot cocoa mix, and that actually held their meth inside of it. And again, we do find the needles, even bare open and don't have a tip on them at all. Another spot that we find a lot of stuff is under the bed. So we'll find unused cat needles, used cat needles, bindles, everything. So what you guys are really going to look for is like the cylinder stuff that's round, you know, that we actually find that are like, the pens are taken apart and we just got the actual, you know, hollowed out point. But basically that's usually what we find here on the reservation. Obviously we have a lot more. If you guys do want to come up and take a closer look, I can let you guys look at this. This is actual methamphetamine from a house. Obviously you guys aren't going to be able to touch it, but I can show you what it looks like just in case you guys do come across something like that. So if you guys want to come up and take a look in your own time, I can let you guys see what it actually looks like. And like on this one, it does have a devil on it. So like I said, you know, different dealer, different package.
If you are finding things like this, and if you do see items that you're questioning, just talk to your kids. Try to build that into your routine so it's not as awkward. You know, when you have to ask them about these types of things, there's tips that we can give you to start those conversations if you don't feel comfortable doing it. So give us a call at Manasapia if you'd like. Our prevention team can also come. We're going to add to this room. Again, we've got posters, the 420, those types of things, just triggers that parents can kind of look for on questioning those. And there's more on the list, like I said, that we're going to be adding. This was kind of a brand new item that our department started doing. There's glass pens that they sell now where it looks like an actual pen, but the tube is glass. It's kind of like a false pen. Some other items that they talked about were like the tin foil, the baggies, those types of things. So if you have any questions, let us know. Otherwise, the biggest thing that I can say preventative-wise is just have those conversations with your kids, you know, little things like sitting down together as a family and eating your meal, picking one night a week to kind of do something together. When you start noticing those behaviors, it's a lot more, it's easier to notice them if you're constantly talking to them. You know kind of how their reactions are. They tend to be, if they're more moody, or, you know, teenagers can tend to be that way anyways if there's something going on at school. But just have those conversations. Those can be triggers right there to identify if something's going on. So
now, what we were talking about earlier about social media. Facebook, Messenger, Snapchat, and so forth. There's a lot of communication that goes on within the bedroom as well when it comes to PlayStation, Xbox, Wii, and things like that. So I know in the past when we did execute search warrants and we would go inside into a bedroom, when they actually left their system on because it was more of a early morning search warrant, and it basically surprised the heck out of them. And we got everybody out, and what they had on their at that time was an Xbox, where they were actually communicating, and like Josh was saying, their ledger, their documentation, their communication, their code names, and you have people from all over the state. You have people across the street. You got the neighbors. So that's another way to communicate with drug dealers or friends that are dealing, or even sellers or buyers, is through the game console. So if you go in, make sure that you take a look at their console as well. And that's going to bring me back to reasonable expectation of privacy. Now there's a legal with I guess as a parent, make sure that you frequently go inside your kid's bedroom to show them that you have presence, that they're under your roof. Frequently going into the bedroom shows them that, hey, mom or dad has free access to my bedroom. Now when you start getting into your older kids, or even your adult kids that are staying, living with you, that's where the reasonable expectation of privacy kicks in. If they lock their door or put a padlock on their door, they have that REP. That means, for example, if there is something going on in the room, such as drugs, or if you call us for a subject removal and you want that person, your child, removed, and they lock the door, and we go in and then their door's locked, we need to get a search warrant in order to get into that bedroom. That is the expectation of privacy as an adult. And what I mean as parents is, if you can go in and out of the bedroom on your own free will, such as picking up laundry or doing the laundry, and he locks his door and you have free access to that, then we don't need a search warrant. But if he has locks on his door and he keeps you out and you're not allowed in his bedroom, then that's REP, and we as law enforcement would have to execute a search warrant on that bedroom. So that's one thing. Make sure as a parent that you have free access in and out of that bedroom to show that it's basically open to the public. Such as a living room, because that can be their private. It can be their domain, and that's where we come into problems sometimes. Is that we would have to execute a search warrant in order to get in that bedroom. So keep that in mind as well. When we talk about paraphernalia or contraband inside the bedroom, not only what you see in plain sight is actually what you see not in plain sight as well, is hidden compartments. And what we're talking about, like Brian Kostelic, is it looks like a Pringles can, but you open the bottom in it and it's a hidden compartment. Not only items, but also within your house. I was looking at, as a prime example, a good location is the heater, the vent. Make sure that you go in and you inspect the bedroom. Something out of place. It could be have a hidden compartment underneath a rug. If there's a rug there and you lift that rug, there might be a hidden compartment underneath the rug. So not only with what you see in plain view, is also what you look for inside your house as the vents and things like that. Vents or heaters, especially the closet. Closet, for some reason, is a well-hidden compartment for smaller hidden compartments. So keep that in mind as well. We talk about what's in there, how does it get in there, or what is leaving the bedroom. You would think that, oh, my kid's in there playing Fortnite at 10 o'clock at night, and he's got his music blaring and whatnot. Go in there and check, because the game console may be on, but the window's open. So you got to think about the bedroom and who's coming in and who's coming out, what's coming in and what's coming out through the bedroom window. you go outside and inspect, because if you lock your doors or lock your windows, or if there's screens on there, in order to get those screens off, you gotta be very delicate. The screen comes off, you're most likely gonna bend the screen or the frame around the screen. So that's a sign. If you got a wooden stump or a stool next to the house, that's another sign that something's going on here. So whether people are coming in or someone's leaving, or something's coming in or something's coming out, it could be actually under your nose a drug window, where people are actually knocking on the window and he's doing his transactions through the window. So you got to also keep that in mind as well. Lock boxes, you go in there and there's a lock box or a safe, and we execute a search warrant. By any means necessary, law enforcement has a right to get into that lock box. Whether it's, if it's a big heavy duty safe, we call in a locksmith, we drill through the safe in order to open it up. Most times we do get consent after they realize that we're going to destroy your safe if you don't allow us in there. And then we usually do get consent in order to salvage the safe. So we get the combination, or we get the key and we get into the lockbox or the safe. Now, depending on the safe, it might be a 500-pound safe that's sitting there. We're not going to haul that and take it to the PD. We're going to drill right there on the spot and take whatever's inside or view whatever's inside. If it's a smaller one, we can easily, if it's transportable, we can transport it. We can transport it to PD and continue with that search warrant at the PD and enter into that secured box. So I guess that's more FYI for the parents. If you do see stuff like that, make sure that you do have access to that bedroom. So you do have, it's easier for law enforcement, even if they lock their door, we would be able to gain access. If not, we would have to execute a search warrant. I guess with that, I thought this was a great idea. There's every day there's something always new. There's always something that these kids are very creative about. So even, and that's how us law enforcement, our social services, or even the school finds out the new trend. Because every day, every week, there's a new trend. The latest is vaping. We realized just in the last couple of weeks that our school resource officers, we don't have no code or ordinance on vaping or cigarettes, but it's still considered contraband or paraphernalia within the school district. We don't got no code, we can't issue a citation, but once there's THC inside these vapes, then we can start charging. And again, like Josh was saying, it's not illegal, it's decriminalized. So there's a difference, and a lot of people think that's, when that time comes when it is legal, then we'll deal with it then, but now it's decriminalized and it's still illegal yet. In order for us to determine is just the odor on the vape itself, because it does have that distinct odor of THC.
Yeah, and I actually just dealt with one of those not that long ago, actually with Romney County, and specifically it does test positive for THC when it is tested. So the smell does, have the odor of THC. It does actually have a high percentage of THC in it. And a lot of those were coming from, you can order those, they're coming from down south towards like Arizona and such.
We also did have, I was working with the SRO, the school resource officer. He did, about maybe 2 weeks ago, he did catch a child in one of the schools with a vape that tested positive for THC. So it is around here. Just know that they cannot purchase a vape unless they are 18 years of age. So if they do have a vape, they got it illegally. And it is around here with the THC. So if you guys do recognize that a child under the age of 18 has a vape, you know, it's probably, they probably shouldn't have it in the first place, or there might be THC oil in there. So it is around here.
Any other questions? So with that, before we take a 5-minute break, just to let everyone know, we're part of the DEA Drug Take Back initiative, along with the Panaway-Mackinac Coalition. April 27th is our National Drug Take Back, but we do have a drug drop box at the police department, and I believe is Sheriff Smith, she's still here yet? Do you have a drop box at the sheriff's office?
Yes.
Okay, so you got two locations, one at the sheriff's office and one at the police department front lobby. The purpose for that is, and then just like Mr. Kostelik was talking about earlier, was if you're done with your medication, whether it's prescribed or controlled or not, because gabapentins aren't controlled substance, any type of medications that you do not use, please bring them down and utilize our drop box. We usually have to empty those out probably every 2 or 3 months at the police department. The only problem that we do have is we can't accept sharps. So if there's needles, and I don't want to throw the clinic under the bus, but if you do have sharps, unused sharps, if you can, take them down to the clinic. We're working on trying to get a sharps container to be more convenient for people dropping off their drugs.
Rich, I do have just one more thing to add for those of you who have meds that you want to keep safe. We did bring some prescription lock boxes here. Manteca gives them out year-round while we can. We've been doing it for like the last year. We've brought some on site. If you have a need, please let us know. You can sign one out. Otherwise, just come up to Manteca. We're going to also give some to Diane in the clinic, just to keep them safe and out of your kids' hands or anything like that.
Great. The drop box at the PD it's available from 8 to 4:30. If it's after hours, you would just have to press the button and let the person that's answering the intercom, just let them know that you're there to drop off medication, and then one of our officers, our patrol officers, will probably show up, open the door so you have access to that drop box so you can dispose of your medication. So with that, law enforcement no longer investigates. There's a lot of times where people would get their prescription drugs down at the clinic, and 10 minutes later they come up and want to report their meds stolen, especially the opioids or the controlled medication. Law enforcement no longer investigates complaints such as determine if it is a legitimate complaint, where it wasn't an elder that was, if it's a legitimate complaint, not just they left my $1 million there but took my drugs, we're not going to take those. Or if it's just solely drugs, we're not going to take those. If it's a burglary or a robbery or anything like that, of course we'll definitely investigate that. But people that come down or come up from the clinic and want to report their drugs stolen, we don't investigate that anymore, because they're asking, well, I just need a statement from the law enforcement reporting that my drugs are stolen so I can go down and get a refill. We don't do that anymore. So unfortunately, it was to a point too where we would walk down and it was like cockroaches. They would all take off, and the minute we go back up to the police department, they all kind of hang around the doors. Some ridiculous, people coming up and asking for meds, and that party's been deceased for like over a month, and they're still they're still trying to get their meds in. So hats off to the clinic for making those. For a while, it was pretty bad, and now with the clinic, with your alternative, I guess, with the chiropractors or physical therapy and things like that. So it's a good thing that we're cracking down on the abuse within our community. All right, next on our agenda is going to be a local community member that she's going to talk about her battle with the addiction. So with that, I would like to introduce a community member, and I really appreciate it. I attended one of her meetings up in the open, and it's very, I guess it's close to home, close to the heart with the battle. With that, Lorraine Shooter.
Well, my name is Lorraine. I am a recovering addict. I was a heroin addict, crack, pills, booze, not meth. I don't know what it was about meth. I just didn't get the same effect as meth. I didn't get it. I would look at people and I would just tell them I don't get it. I was probably the only one that could smoke a bowl of meth and go to bed. But my story started back in 2005. I started drinking heavily. I worked at Mystic Lake Casino and I friended some girls from that tribe out there. And if you know anything about the tribes, you know how wealthy they are. And that summer I was boozing pretty hard, and one of my roommates was from LCO, and we were boozing one weekend and we didn't see her for a couple days. And I went to work because I worked at the casino, and I woke up with a gun to my face. And her and a couple people from South Minneapolis took this man who was selling cocaine, tried to rob him. They ended up killing him. They tied up the girl. They beat her up, and they thought that they killed her, but they didn't. And they took off, and she was able to get herself undone, and she went screaming. And they found out who it was that killed him, and within 2 weeks they were looking for her. And I woke up to guns in my face and the SWAT team and the DEA, and it was quite embarrassing because at the time I lived in a very rich neighborhood. There was about 5 of us that worked at Mystic Lake together, and our incomes were really high. So after that, I just still was a boozer. I would mess with pills once in a while. Coke was the thing. I went, because I'm a very social person. A lot of people know me. I'm pretty social. I was like, man, you know, where do all the Indians hang out? Well, I'm gonna go to South Minneapolis because I know that's where the Indians hang out. And I went to the bar called the Commodore, which is burnt down now. And I started hanging out with different types of Indians that I just met from the Proj, and they were actually active gang members from the Native mob, and a lot of them were way up there, and the ones that I knew are in prison right now and are never getting out. So I ended up quitting my job there because I couldn't handle the hangovers and the loud slot machines, and just ended up quitting my job, and I got a job at a check cashing store. Well, one morning, opening up the store by myself, have my radio on, go out past, go open the door, and the lady who I worked for didn't have security. So I go walking, and all of a sudden, and I got robbed. And it was the most horrific thing that I can't, to this day, I can't handle, like kids running behind me. I had a pistol in my mouth. He took my purse, he took my money, he took my ID. I thought the way he like touched me and felt me up, I was sure I was gonna get raped. He put me in a bathroom, read me my ID, my address, told me where I lived, and then walked out, and I stayed in there and I cried until I heard somebody say, hey, you know, is anyone in here? And so I kicked the door out, and I got scared, pressed the button, freaked out. And that night, I was scared and I couldn't go to sleep. Well, I had friended these girls from the tribe that I worked for, and I was like, you know, I had already done pills and coke and anything else. And I said, man, I can't do this. I don't know what's going on. This man has my ID. I'm scared, you know, all this stuff. And she's like, well, here, I got something. She didn't pressure me to do it. I did it myself. And that was my first try doing Oxycontin, O's. And man, I loved it. Like, I was like, whew, this is great. I'm no longer scared. I'm okay. And if you know anything about that tribe, they are super, super wealthy. So my addiction went from here to here, like that quick. I was speedballing with cocaine with Oxycontin, just run it underwater, crush it up, mix a little bit of coke in there. It was the best feeling in the world. And the pills, I noticed I started to get sick when I wouldn't have them. I started to get the shakes, I would start to sweat, I would have diarrhea, and as soon as I did a pill, I was okay. I never really knew the type of withdrawals, just a little bit of the shakes or not, you know, like feeling sick, because I always had my friends there who were like, oh man, we can't let you get sick, and they would, here. And every 2 weeks, there was drug dealers that came with $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 worth of pills. So we would do them. I've done morphine patches. I've sucked on morphine bags. I've snorted heroin. You name it, I've done it. Coke, crack. I became one of the best crack cookers ever. Our dealers would come any time of the day or night, 3 o'clock in the morning, they were there. Then it got to the point where we were using so much that when the dealer would come, he would hide it in her house. So we'd call him up and he'd say, well, now it's time for a treasure hunt. And we would be like, oh, okay. And we were high, you know, high, drunk, up, okay. And he would tell us where to go, and sure enough, whatever we were calling for is what was there. I know that I started losing my family. I started losing who I was. I started losing friends, and I know that people knew that I was addicted, but I don't think that they knew how bad, and I still don't think that people knew how bad I was. I used to call, I know, my mom, my friends, and I would just be so high. They'd be like, well, why is the FBI chasing you? I don't know, man, they just know. Well, what do they know? They know a lot of shit, you know. They're in the trees, they're watching me. And then my mom, it got to a point where my mom was just like, she tried to help me in a lot of ways, but I think she just didn't know how to help me anymore, where she just got to the point where she's like, okay, you know what, I'm making supper, so why don't you call me later? And now I know that was probably one of the hardest things for her to do, because your kid who's like freaking out and high and snorting heroin and smoking heroin and, you know, sipping on, she didn't know really, you know, because heroin and I think meth and crack and stuff wasn't that bad. And when I would come home for visits or the powwow, which I'm like ashamed to even be going to a powwow like that, I ignored a lot of my friends because I was high. I didn't want nobody to know. I always made sure that I had enough drugs for myself. I didn't share with nobody because I knew that the stuff that I had was stronger than the stuff that was around here. So I hoarded my drugs, and I would keep them and I would hide them. When I'd start to run out, I would go home, or excuse me, go back to Minneapolis. Well, it started to get worse. One time I came to, and I don't know if I had fallen asleep, if I passed out, or if my mind just came to, like out of a blackout. You know, when you're drunk and you come out of a blackout. I was outside and I was looking around, and I looked up and I'm like, there's a fucking palm tree. Where the fuck is there a palm tree? And I go walking in this hotel room and I'm looking at my friend, I'm like, man, get up. There's a fucking palm tree out here, man. Like, where are we? And they're like, looking at me, we're in California. What the fuck, we're in California? How did we, you know, and I'm like, how did we get in California? Here I had packed my own bags. I had won a jackpot in Las Vegas at the airport. I had walked through security. I had gotten checked. I was drinking at a bar. All that stuff had happened in my mind. I still don't remember that. I was in a lot of dangerous situations. I was, after I sobered up, I'd come home and, you know, I was sobering up from the drugs, and I was pretty, you know, the craving stuff were gone, but I heard a knock on the door one day, and it was a cop, and I had a subpoena for a murder case in Oregon. And that was, my mom was like, I don't know what the f is going on, and my mom don't ever really use the F word, but she told me what the f was going on, what happened, what's going on. So I had to tell her the whole story, and she just, she looked like she wanted to cry. And what ended up happening was I didn't go there because the woman knew that people were going to come and testify against her. But back up a little bit before that, the situations I put myself in were like really dangerous, and I used to deal cards at underground gambling houses in North Minneapolis. drug dealers just all around me dealing cards because, you know, sometimes I didn't want to be so dependent on my friend who had all the money. Well, I'll go get us some drugs. I'll go deal cards. They'd throw their guns on the table, and there I was, heckling and, you know, watching these men play for piles of dope and guns and money, and there I am. And some of the people that I met and that I knew or that I thought were my friends were like some of the most terrifying people now. Like I would not even, there's no way I would bring my daughter around them. There's no way I would bring myself around them. I sobered up after being addicted for about 2 years. It was to the point where I started thinking about shooting up. I had syringes. I started tying off with my friends so they could bang. I would drive for them while they were like shooting in their neck. I just knew that it was coming to that point. And me and my friend we knew too, because the sickness was coming more and more and more and more and more and more. And me and my friend looked at each other and she said, you know, we got to get off the O's, we got to get off the H, you know, we're getting bad. So we decided that we were going to chief it out. Yeah, man, I'm going to chief it out. And so I was going to do it first and she was going to take care of me. So what happened was sure enough, took me first time, man, it was the worst pain in the world. I couldn't handle it. So I did a little bit heroin, felt better. So I'm like, okay, did it again, went a little bit longer, did it again, went a little bit longer. But by it took me 4 times in a week to kick heroin. I mean, not to like not crave it, but just to know what I was getting into, to be ready to fight it, to be ready to stand and suffer. And I felt inside myself that I needed to suffer for what I put my mom through, my family, my friends, my loved one, myself, my spirit. And I can tell you that it is the worst pain I have ever felt in my life. I can't even explain the pain. My eyeballs hurt, my skin hurt, just blinking, breathing. It was pain. But I toughed it out. I had my friend. I'm not saying that I didn't tough it out without, you know, I didn't do heroin. I smoked a little bit of weed to help me through it. I recovered from it. And I want you guys to know that if you guys have loved ones that are in your family that are addicted to pills, that there is hope for them. Just continue to love them, because I think that if my mom didn't love me, that I probably would be dead. And if you recognize anybody that you know that is doing pills or that is doing heroin or meth, don't turn your back on them, because that's the one thing that hurts. And you need to always just be there for them. Try to help them. Try to encourage them. I believe that cultures are key. Up in Neopa, I run a group called the Natives Against Heroin. I joined that group a couple years ago when I lived in Minneapolis, and the things that I've learned from that group has helped me, has encouraged me, has helped build me up. And also, what has kept me sober and on the straight and narrow is my daughter. I have a 4-year-old and I had her late in life, and I really believe that she saved my life. I mean, I'm not perfect. I've been off. I've slipped many times drinking and boozing. I mean, like in 2011, I caught a drunk driving charge up here. You know, those are some fights that I have, some battles that I have. Right now, I just try to bring awareness to the community about the heroin, about the meth, because me running this Natives Against Heroin group, it is out there and it is rising rapidly. I get a lot of inboxes because I don't judge people, because I know what it's like to be an addict. I know those hurts, I know those pains, I know those withdrawals, I know the shame that comes with it. And I try to express love. I express tough love. There's some girls that I've driven to the methadone clinic and I've expressed tough love. I've had to pull over and say, no, you know what, your baby's crying. We're gonna sit right here and you're gonna sit in the back and you're gonna feed your baby. This is what you're doing. You need to learn how to function in recovery. But I want you all to be aware that it is here, and I don't think it's gonna go anywhere for a long time. And as a community, we need to stand together to fight this, because it's gonna get worse. It's gonna get worse. Your loved ones are gonna suffer. Our children are already suffering. There's a couple inboxes that I've received that have kept me up at night about children. I have Narcan that I give out, and I've just given out 2 packs of Narcan a couple days ago. So with that, usually it's a little bit longer, and if you ever, I have a Natives Against Heroin page. I have a group that I have every Thursday. It's about bringing awareness and trying to approach this drug epidemic in a different way than what we have been doing. But thank you for listening to my story.
We do have our Facebook that we try to keep up to date on what law enforcement is doing, to include updates on any arrests or high-profile investigations that we deal with. And with Facebook, you do get Messenger. And a while back, we did have a hotline, but for some reason that didn't work. A lot of people tend to text, but the law enforcement, we do have Messenger. Any questions, comments, or concerns regarding law enforcement, to even include if you believe or suspect someone dealing drugs or needs help or anything such as that, message the Trumbull Police through Messenger. And that's only two people, including myself, one of them that has access to Messenger. And the other one is part of NAJI. That investigator has access to Messenger as well. So it's not when you message, the whole PD reads it. There's only 2 of us, myself and a NAJI investigator, that receives those messages. And since then, I guess since last year, we've been getting a lot of tips and a lot of questions and concerns through Messenger. So just to throw it out there that the law enforcement, our tribal police does have Messenger, and it's confidential. That we do look into those tips or answer any questions through Messenger. I guess with that, I'd like to introduce Nicole.
Hello, thank you for bearing with me. I appreciate you being patient. This is a lot of people, so I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm a little nervous, so also bear with me there. I'm glad I could follow up your story though. I really appreciate you sharing and being open and honest and vulnerable, because that actually saves me half the battle with these presentations, because a lot of times I have to almost validate why I'm here and speak about why it's important to listen, but after going after you, I really appreciate that, so thank you. But like you said, my name is Nicole. I work at the AIDS Resource Center of Wisconsin, currently out of the Eau Claire office. I was hired on as a prevention training coordinator, doing all of these Narcan trainings throughout the state of Wisconsin. We have had a series of grants under the state targeted opioid overdose response grant that I am the one who's coordinating these trainings for. So some of you guys might know Jim Bruner. He works really closely with your community. So he hasn't gone anywhere, and I want you to know that, but I'm just doing these trainings specifically. So with that being said, a little overview of what we'll talk about today is we're going to talk about the AIDS Resource Center of Wisconsin, ARCW, what we do as an organization, and what we do a little more specifically within prevention of the department that I work in. We're going to go over the harm reduction theory, the theory that we operate off of. What are opioids and how overdoses occur? Because a lot of times when I do these presentations, I feel like a lot of times people are thinking only heroin, and that's the only problem. But that is not the case, and we'll talk about that a little more in depth too. We'll go over our current overdose climate, and then I'll give you some statistics nationally, but a little more locally to the state of Wisconsin. So, at the AIDS Resource Center, ARCW, we are the nation's largest and growing AIDS service organization. We currently have 10 locations throughout the state of Wisconsin, and within the last couple of years, we expanded out into Rocky Mountain Cares in Colorado, as well as within the last year, we expanded out into St. Louis Effort for AIDS out in Missouri. We are an HIV medical home, and we currently house about 5,000 HIV positive clients who are enrolled in our services in the state of Wisconsin. And our goal is to get every person linked with care and on viral suppressant medication if you are HIV positive. So a lot of times people have barriers to this, and we help individuals with what they need help with, whether it be medical help, dental help, pharmacy, behavioral health, food pantry, case management, housing services, more, really whatever people need help with, we help them out with. And then we offer those rigorous frontline prevention services, or like I said, the department I work in. So we do free, rapid HIV, hepatitis C, and syphilis education testing. And then, like I said, we link people to care if they're HIV positive. So the cool thing is that they were to test positive with me today for HIV, I'd get them set up with a case manager and get enrolled in those services so nobody is lost in care at all. We offer the Clean Life Point Needle Exchange Program, the Syringe Access Program. I actually have worked and ran the Eau Claire Syringe Access Program for about 3 years now before transitioning into this position. So I have worked very closely with people who inject drugs recreationally, for pain management, whatever it might be. And so there is a lot of stigma out there. We'll go over that a little bit more later too and talk a little more about that. At our organization, we do outreach in community clinics, gay bars, Pride Fest, city streets, treatment centers, jails, schools, professional settings, etc. Really, wherever people need our services, we are happy to collaborate and talk about if our services are appropriate. We do condom distribution, social media outreach, and we do education on PrEP, or the pre-exposure prophylaxis for preventing HIV spreading. So if you guys want to talk about that more one-on-one, you can always come up and ask me about that, and I'd fill you in on that more later. But we operate off of the harm reduction theory at ARCW. So harm reduction can be applied to anything, whether it's dieting, quitting smoking, other small achievable goals. It approaches drug use from a realistic and pragmatic public health perspective, recognizing that whether we like it or not, drug use is part of our world, and what can we do to make that less harmful for everybody involved. It is a set of practical strategies that reduces negative consequences of drug use, including poverty and crime, and other risky behaviors such as sexual risk. It accepts that illicit drug use is part of our world, like I said, and chooses to work to minimize those harmful effects rather than simply ignoring or condemning the problem. We get people the help that they need right now, making things achievable and accessible, which then opens the door for discussion of treatment, referral of other services, helping people take those next steps when they are ready to be taking them. We meet people where they are at in the course of their drug use and their sexual health, but we don't want to leave them there, right? That's not our goal. Syringe access programs are the most effective evidence-based HIV hepatitis C prevention tool for people who use drugs. It incorporates a spectrum of strategies from safer use to managed use, and then the ultimate goal is abstinence, of course. It has reduced the number of new HIV diagnoses among people who inject drugs by 80%. Since the beginning of needle exchange in 2015, only 4.1 new HIV diagnoses were among people who inject drugs in the state of Wisconsin, which is pretty amazing. So, what is an opioid? When we're talking about opioids, we are talking about other substances other than just heroin, and that's what I want to emphasize to you. We're talking about not only heroin, but we're talking about codeine, morphine, tramadol, methadone, buprenorphine, Suboxone, Demerol, Dilaudid, hydrocodone, Vicodin, oxycodone, Percocet, Oxycontin, fentanyl, carfentanil, etc. So no matter what form it comes in, whether it's that orange pill bottle or it's the white powdery substance, they all have sedative effects, they all are respiratory depressants, and they all act on the opioid receptors in the brain. So if we're talking about an opiate is a drug naturally derived from the flowering opium poppy plant, which has been around for thousands of years. Examples of opiates include heroin, morphine, and codeine. Morphine was named after Morpheus, who was the Greek god of dreams. Morphine is the most active substance in opium. On the other hand, the term opioid is a broader term, so that includes opiates, but it refers to any substance, natural or synthetic, that binds to the brain's opioid receptors. And so the opioid receptors in the brain are the parts of the brain that are responsible for controlling pain, controlling reward, and addictive behaviors. So when we're talking about semi-synthetic opioids, we are talking about opioids that mimic morphine, such as Vicodin, Oxycontin, Percocet. These were created in the mid-80s and 90s and have been widely used and abused since then. But then there are fully synthetic opioids that are currently out there and they are circulating around, such as fentanyl. When we're talking about fentanyl, that is 30 to 50 times more potent than heroin and 50 to 100 times more potent than morphine. But then there's also carfentanil out there, which is up to 100 times more potent than fentanyl, meaning 3,000 to 5,000 times stronger than typical heroin and 5,000 to 10,000 times stronger than typical morphine. So when we're talking about a substance such as carfentanil, that is literally a horse or an elephant tranquilizer that people are injecting into their body, whether it's known or not, whether they are aware of what they're actually using or not. But either way, the human body is not meant to be withstanding a substance so potent and so strong. It is most often used among people who are already taking other opioids, and so like I said, it might be mixed and it might not be aware of, or it might be taken to relieve chronic or breakthrough pain, such as pain caused by cancer. However, if we are looking at these vials here, these graphics, if you look at the very left vial, that is the amount that an individual who has no tolerance to an opioid would need to come into contact with of heroin to be overdosing. If we are looking at the middle vial there, that is the amount that a person would need to come into contact with of fentanyl to be overdosing if you have no tolerance to an opioid. And then if you look even further on the right vial there, that is the amount that you need to come into contact with of carfentanil to be overdosing. So when we are talking about carfentanil, that is literally 2 grains of salt worth that you could come into contact with and you could be overdosing. Basic science of an opioid overdose. When somebody takes an opioid, it enters the brain, it converts to morphine, and it binds to those opioid receptors in the brain. So opioid receptors control autonomic processes critical for life, such as blood pressure, arousal, respiration. Opioid overdoses frequently involve a suppression of breathing, which can affect the amount of oxygen that reaches the brain, or hypoxia, which can have short and long-term psychological and neurological effects, including coma and permanent brain damage. After intravenous injection of heroin, users report feeling a surge of euphoria or a rush, accompanied by a dry mouth, a warm flushing of the skin, heaviness of the extremities, and clouded mental functioning. Following this initial euphoria, the user then goes on the nod or alternatively in a wakeful and drowsy state. So if you come across somebody who, when they are talking to you, they're nodding out in the middle of their sentence, they're kind of falling over in the middle of their sentence, that actually could be an early onset sign of an opioid overdose. And it's important to know that because you don't want to leave that individual alone. If you leave that individual alone, eventually they could fall out of it, and then you might not be there to respond to get them the help that they need. If the person does not inject the drug, that initial rush might not be experienced, but all other effects are the same, and that's what's also important to know, is that, like I said, just because you are popping a pill versus injecting doesn't mean that it's doing different things to your body. It is doing the same thing at the end of the day. If we look at that graphic there, you can think of the opioid receptor similar in your brain, similar to like a vacuum tube, okay? You think of an opioid coming in the brain like a ping pong ball, and it just binds to that receptor, and it's just stopping those processes from occurring. If we are talking about opioid overdose symptoms, so I did list this out in the packet, the yellow sheet in front of you. So if you come across somebody whose face is extremely pale and or clammy to touch, their body might be limp. They might have extremely small, pinpoint pupils. The fingernails or lips might have a bluish or purplish cast. The individual might be vomiting or making gurgling noises. There might be cough suppression. There might be extreme confusion, extreme delirium. He or she might not be able to be awakened from sleep or is unable to speak. Breathing might be slower stopped, and heartbeat might be slower stopped. Those are all physical symptoms that somebody might be overdosing from an opioid. Opioid overdoses are different than other overdoses, such as like a meth overdose or overamping, simply because of the limited time there is to react to the situation and get the person the help that they need. A person can suffer brain damage from lack of oxygen in as little as 4 minutes. And so that's why it is important, if you're comfortable doing so, that you're rescue breathing for the individual. Because if you are not rescue breathing for them and you give them Narcan, they could wake up, but they could suffer, like I said, that permanent brain damage. Depressed breathing is the most dangerous side effect of an opioid overdose. Lack of oxygen to the brain can cause other organ systems, such as the kidneys or heart, to shut down. If a person suffering an opioid overdose is left alone and falls asleep, the person could eventually die to depressed or cessation of breathing. So that's why we're doing a lot of these trainings in jails throughout the state of Wisconsin, because in the past, if somebody was coming in heavily under the influence, they would throw them in a cell, have them sleep it off for a couple hours, but we are finding with opioid use that is not an effective method, right? Current overdose climate. So I know that this is a lot of words on a slide. I will pull out the most important points for you here, but like I said, the middle colored pages is where you can find a lot of this information in your packets. In 2017, more Wisconsin residents died from drug overdose deaths than motor vehicle accidents, suicide, or firearms. This was a total of 916 individuals statewide of Wisconsin. Wisconsin state crime lab cases involving heroin increased by 419% from 2008 to 2014. Deaths from fentanyl and other synthetic opioids killed more than 20,000 people in 2016, doubling the previous year's rate, shows the CDC. In Wisconsin, prescription opioids contributed to 392, or 47% of the 843 drug overdose deaths in 2014, while heroin specifically contributed to 238, or 28% of deaths. So when we're thinking about that statistic, 47% of overdoses were due to the orange pill bottle, where only 28% were due to that white powdery heroin substance form. So that's where I do usually talk a lot about stigma. Because working the needle exchange, running the exchange, you see people of all walks of life. You know, it's not just your stereotypical drug user. It is, you know, I see men in business suits who inject in their armpits because they don't want anybody to know. I have met 11-year-old kids who started injecting at the age of 9 because their parents taught them how to inject. I've met partners who have been married for 10 plus years and their partner has no idea because they've been injecting between their toes for the entire 10 years. I meet athletes from the university. I meet, you know, I've met nurses who misuse their own prescription pads. I've met a nurse who has literally inserted her own port in her arm so she could continuously use on her shift and not have to reinsert a needle every time. So there is so much stigma out there and it's impacting everybody in all walks of life, truly. And that's what's important to know. Last year, first responders transported almost 1,000 Wisconsin seniors for suspected unintentional opioid overdoses. So, you know, it could be your grandma down the street who's taking too much of her painkiller because she's in chronic pain. You know, if you are a caretaker for an elderly individual and you are in charge of giving them fentanyl patches, what we have seen in the past is that if you are not physically taking that old fentanyl patch away from the individual you are distributing the fentanyl to, they might have a patch on their leg, and then you give them a new patch and you don't take the old one away, so they put the new patch on their arm. But there still is some residual fentanyl in that old patch, and so there's a lot more in the body than what is intended to be in the body. So we're seeing people overdose that way. In 2016, 2017, 11.4 million people misused prescription opioids. 2 million of those people used for the first time. In 2016, nationally, all of the United States, there was 42,249 people dying every year from drug overdose deaths, or this equaled out to be about 130 people per day. And that's a lot when it doesn't need to be happening, right? National overdose deaths, number of deaths involving opioids. This graph is from 2002 to 2017. You can see a steady increase of deaths from prescription opioids over time. This graph shows a trend that there are more men than women users, which seems to be the trend that we see at the needle exchange. Also, it is aged mostly among people 25 to 35, but like I said, all walks of life, all ages, genders. It's impacting everyone. National overdose deaths, number of deaths involving heroin specifically. This is the same time period, so 2002 to 2017. I would argue that this graph is a little bit more shocking. You see less accessibility to prescription opioids over time, which equals more accessibility to street drugs, higher potencies, mixing, fentanyl, carfentanil, etc. It's not only the potency of the substance sometimes that is hurting individuals, but a lot of times it might be what the substance is cut with, whether somebody is getting a substance cut with drywall or rat poison. You know, these are things that shouldn't be in the human body, let alone directly injected into your veins. I did pull some data last week. So in the last year, if we're looking statewide, all of Wisconsin, we distributed a total of 4,873,344 syringes, all of Wisconsin. This was a total of 42,575 separate exchanges made, and there were a total of 3,244,136 safer injection materials distributed. So when we are talking about safer injection materials, that would be anything associated with the injection process that can carry the hepatitis C or HIV virus. If we are looking statewide, all of Wisconsin, for the same time period, the last year, Narcan or naloxone distribution and training. If I didn't say it earlier, Narcan, naloxone, same thing. One's just a name brand versus a generic name, but you can use those two terms interchangeably, if I didn't say it earlier. All of the state of Wisconsin, they were newly trained 8,988 individuals in Narcan or naloxone. This included 1,230 people who were family or friends of people who inject drugs. This included 2,372 agency professionals. And there was a total of 1,537 overdose reversals reported to us at ARCW specifically. I like to give this information and be really clear in saying this is separate than what law enforcement might be aware of. Because of the 1,537 overdoses reported to us, in only 280 of the instances was 911 called. And in only 276 of the instances was the individual taken to the hospital for further medical attention. So whether we like it or not, it's real, it's happening, and it's in our communities. How Narcan works, naloxone and the opioid receptors. So Narcan or naloxone is a pure opioid antagonist, meaning it reverses respiratory and central nervous system depression. Shelf life for Narcan and naloxone is about 18 to 24 months, so that's why it's important to just keep an eye on it. It will expire at some point. Everything I would give out today will be good through 2020, so you're okay for a little bit. I brought, I believe, about 70 doses or so we should be okay if everybody does want to take one. And if for whatever reason we do run out, I am very genuinely sorry, and I can get that to you at some other point, but just wait and talk to me and we can coordinate that. But you just want to make sure that you're watching for extreme temperatures and sunlight as well. You don't want to keep it in your car, you don't want to keep it in the fridge, anything like that. Just room temperature best that you can is what we recommend. 59 to 86 degrees Fahrenheit to be exact. If it is getting to a point where you know it's about to expire and you haven't used it yet, we do ask that you just reach out to us at one of our ARCW locations about 3 months before it expires, and we can get that replaced for you if we still have nasal Narcan available for public. If we don't have nasal available to replace it for you we can give you intramuscular and teach you how to use that as well. So at least, in the very least, you will have some form to take home with you. We just recommend about 3 months before it expires. So if you're not using it, that way we can get it into the hands of people who need to use it a little sooner than you might as well. Just kind of help save resources a little bit. If for whatever reason you use your Narcan nasal spray, we do ask that once again you reach out and let us know so that we can keep our data reporting purposes as accurate and up to date as possible. We would just ask you the zip code it happened in, how many shots you had to use, if you know if it was for heroin use or other opioid use, and then if you called 911 or if you took them to the hospital. And that's all we would ask you, and we would replace that Narcan for you too. So if it's at the Green Bay location, if it's at the Appleton location, if it's at the Wausau location, it does not matter. Just please reach out in some way, and we would really appreciate that. What is actually going on in the body though, when Narcan is entering the brain, is that Narcan has a stronger affinity for the opioid receptors than opioids such as heroin or Percocet, knocking the opioids off the receptors for a short period of time, allowing the person to breathe again and reversing that overdose. So you can see that in the graphic here. If the picture on the left is what we talked about earlier, the opioid receptor being similar to that vacuum tube, the opioid being similar to that ping pong ball binding to that receptor, we see in the graphic on the right here, Narcan coming in, knocking that opioid off the receptor and binding to it instead for a short period of time. Like I said, reversing that overdose. It's important to also know that Narcan doesn't actually clear the opioid out of the brain, it just acts as though it's clearing the opioid out of the brain. And so you need to either be calling 911 for further medical backup, which is of course what we do recommend in every situation. But if you're not calling 911, it is very important that you stay with the person. and you watch them and you monitor them, because Narcan doesn't clear the opioid out of the brain, it just acts as though it does. So Narcan can wear off in 30 to 60 minutes. And once Narcan wears off, those opioids can come back and bind to those receptors again and bring an onset of an overdose again, even if they don't use any more substance. It's very important to let the person know, of course, do not use any more substance for at least a couple hours, because if they use, the likelihood of them re-overdosing is so much higher, of course. Yep, so half-life of many opioids is much longer, so it's important to stay with the person, like I said. They may need monitoring, possible repeated doses. In a typical heroin overdose situation, you'd need 1, maybe 2 shots of this, and that would be normal. However, we've talked to people with mixing fentanyl, carfentanil, etc. So we have talked to people who need 6 to 15 shots to be pulled out of it, which is a lot more than what you might have access to. And so that is why it's important to be calling 911 for further medical backup. Literature suggests that there has been no known adverse reactions to Narcan. In the event that there was, it seemed as though it was due to an underlying condition already present, whether it be seizures, pulmonary edema, arrhythmias, etc. But you cannot give somebody too much Narcan. You cannot overdose from Narcan. You cannot get high from Narcan. So that's why, when in doubt, if you come across an individual that's not responding for whatever reason and you don't know why, and you have Narcan on you and available, it will not hurt them to give it to them, like I said. In my hometown in Eau Claire, not that long ago, there was an individual who was non-responsive downtown. He was just laying there passed out. Somebody came across him and had Narcan on them, gave him Narcan and saved his life. They didn't know why he was not responding, but they knew that he was not responsive and nobody was on their way already to be helping him. A lot of times people are mixing multiple substances. So Narcan will not work on meth. Narcan will not work on benzos, alcohol, cocaine, any other substance other than an opioid. Narcan will not work on. However, if you have multiple substances in your body and they're all playing a part of why you're not responding, sometimes taking that one agent out of the brain can help revive a person and restore that breathing again. Opioid overdose response. So this is the purple sheet in front of you if you're somebody who likes to follow along. Our acronym to help you remember what to do if you come across anybody who are displaying those symptoms that we previously talked about is called Scare Me. So the first thing you will want to do if you come across an individual is try to stimulate them. Whether it be snapping, clapping, really loudly in their face or ear. If you know their name, call it really loudly. If that's not working, at that point you want to take your knuckles and do either a chest or sternum rub really hard or an upper lip rub really hard. That kind of pain would generally get a response from somebody. If they're not responding at that point, you want to be calling 911, of course, getting that backup medical attention coming your way. The first thing you'll want to do then is check out their airway. So make sure there is no vomit in their throat or mouth at all. If there is vomit in their throat or mouth, you need to roll them on their side, clear that out with your 2 fingers before rolling them on their back again, and begin that rescue breathing step if you are comfortable doing so. If you are comfortable with rescue breathing, you don't need to worry about chest compressions. You just need to tilt the head back, plug the nose, and give them 2 quick breaths through the mouth every 5 to 7 seconds. Like I said, not CPR, you don't need to do those chest compressions, just be breathing for them. As a potential responder, it's important to know that somebody who is overdosing might vomit. And so if somebody vomits and there's an opioid in their vomit and you come into contact with that vomit and the mucous membranes in your mouth, if they have a very high potent opioid in their system, that could cause you yourself to be overdosing. And I want to be honest about that and upfront about that. If you have rescue breathing masks, it's important that you use that if you have that available to you. If you are not comfortable rescue breathing, nobody's sitting here forcing you to rescue breathe. But if you have the Narcan and you are calling 911, you are doing everything in your good faith to be saving that person's life. And that is what is most important, is giving that Narcan and calling 911 if you're not comfortable breathing for them. You want to evaluate them. Give them their first muscle or nasal injection, evaluate them, and continue breathing for them and give them additional doses as needed. The more Narcan or naloxone you give a person, the more likely of withdrawal symptoms there are to show. Withdrawal includes confusion, agitation, sweating, vomiting. So what I recommend is give that first dose of Narcan and then stand back, right? see if anything happens for a second or two. If they're not coming out of it, you can then go back in and begin breathing again and give them the additional doses as needed. However, if somebody is confused, agitated, in a lot of pain, they might come out of it swinging. So be aware of that, that can happen, that a person can be combative coming out of it. All of those side effects, the confusion, a lot of pain, that withdrawal, those will all wear off in about a half hour or so. So if somebody comes out of it and you give them Narcan, you can just remind them, hey, you're okay, you're back with us. I'm glad that you're back with us. All that pain, it's gonna be okay. Those side effects will wear off in about a half hour. Let's see, sometimes I like to give some examples because sometimes I think that helps people. Stimulating, that's an important one. I've given this now 2 times to save the person's life, and in the first case that I gave it, the individual, it was a girlfriend and a boyfriend, and so the boyfriend had overdosed in the car, and the girlfriend was very afraid to come ask for help, and so she waited a full 5 minutes before coming and asking for my help. And so when she came to me, she was like, he's gone, he's dead, there is no use going out there, I know he's gone. And I was like, well, you don't know that, let's go. So I grabbed the Narcan, I follow her out there, and we come across him, and I truly did think that he was gone. You know, his face was completely blue, his lips were completely blue, his eyes were rolled back in his head, he had vomited out of both sides of his mouth. And so, you know, I was like, we're gonna try anyways. And so I had her get in there, I had her start rescue breathing for him, and I gave him the first dose of Narcan, and nothing happened. And then, you know, I'm having to breathe for him again a little bit while I'm getting that second dose ready. And we give him the second dose and nothing happens. And I'm just like, oh, that's right. Remember, stimulate him. You gotta remember that. You know, I do these trainings every day. You think that out of anybody, I would be the one who would remember that step. But it's hard in this situation, and it can be scary. And so, you know, breathe for yourself, take care of yourself, do the best that you can. But I stimulated him with my knuckles, rubbed him really hard in his chest and sternum. And that's actually when I did it. It was just like, and he just came out of it, and it was the craziest thing. He got up, he stood up, he threw up a couple of times, and I just reminded him, you know, you're okay, you're back with us, I'm glad to see you. He actually came back in a couple of weeks later, and he's now in treatment, and he's in recovery, and he's doing really well. And so it's like, you don't know when you can help save a person's life, truly. Let's see. How to actually use the nasal spray is very easy to use. It is like using your typical allergy nasal spray. But if you need to ever use this, how you go ahead and do so is that you place your index and your middle finger on the spaces next to the nasal tip and your thumb on the plunger. It is important to note that you do not want to test or prime the shot at all. If you test or prime it, you might waste some or all of your shot. So do not test it. It is ready to go right out of the box, okay? You want to insert the nasal tip into the nostril until your fingers touch the bottom of the person's nose. Firmly press on the plunger of the Narcan device. Throw away the device, return the person to the recovery position, and then continue breathing as needed and give those additional doses as needed until they are either coming out of it or until 911 is there for your backup medical attention. Any questions on that? It's pretty easy, pretty basic. Some frequently asked questions that I get. So if somebody is not breathing and they are not responding, can I give them Narcan nasal spray? Yes, the answer is yes. In most cases, the person might not be breathing or responding actually. But you have mucous membranes in your nose. So even if a person can't physically breathe in the Narcan nasal spray, the Narcan nasal spray will make contact with the mucous membranes in your nose and then go into the bloodstream and up into the brain and do the job. You know, we recommend that you alternate nostrils if you're giving more than one dose. That's best advice. But if you, for whatever reason, if the person's in the car or whatever, what might it be, if you only have access to one nostril, give both the doses in that one nostril. Once again, you're doing your very best in the situation. Are there any cases where you shouldn't give somebody Narcan nasal spray? Okay, I've heard that before. So, you know, everybody is a human being with rights, right? So like I've had a situation where an individual came in heavily under the influence and he knew he was about to overdose. He felt it coming on. So he comes in and he's asking for help and he's walking in the front doors and kind of takes a couple steps and then passes out for a second and then gets right back up, takes a couple more steps, passes out and then just stands back up and is like, I'm good. And I was like, well, maybe you should sit down because you did just pass out. I don't know if you knew that, but just sit down. I'm going to get you some water. I had a granola bar that I got him. He was very adamant that I don't give him Narcan and that I don't call 911. And I let him know, you know, as long as you are still with me and you're breathing and you're responding, I will not give you Narcan. However, the moment that you actually fall out of it, and if you stop responding to me, I am obligated to give you Narcan, and I will be calling 911, and I let him know that. So, you know, you can respect a person and their human rights. However, once they're actually not responding, at that point is when I do recommend that you be administering or calling that 911, like I said. Yeah. Oh, something else I forgot to bring up. So stigma, right? A lot of times people are thinking it's, you know, a certain stereotypical user, but something I forgot to bring up earlier is that nowadays, even high schoolers, they're attending things called farming parties. I don't know if you guys have heard of farming parties, but it's where kids are coming together, farming, pharma, and they bring any prescription pill that they can possibly find in their house, and they come together and they put it in a bowl, and you just pick one out, and it's like Russian roulette, you just see what happens. So like I said, it's impacting a lot more people than what you might think. And really, that's all I can think of right now. Does anybody have any questions right away? Let's hear it.
How many sprays are in each container?
Good question. So in each container is called a kit. And there's 2 doses, so 2 sprays in each kit. Yeah. Anyone else have any questions? Yeah, let's hear it.
I don't really have a question, but I have like something to add. One time I ended up taking too much, and I knew that I was overdosing, but no one ever gave me Narcan, but I knew, and I was saying like, and I was sitting there and I was nodding out and I had my head against the wall. And I could tell myself, and I couldn't even speak. But in my mind, I was saying, "Get up, Braden! Come on, get up, get up, get up, get up, get up." And I think, like, as a user, I probably would have been like how that guy was too. Like, don't you give me Narcan, because it's like it makes you like when they, I don't know, it takes that high away. You know, when you're a user.
And some people are using to get high, but some people truly aren't even using to get high. And that's the thing that I've realized too, is that, you know, like I've heard some truly, you know, situations that make your heart break, because it's like, you know, I've met a roofer that he inherited his dad's business. So he's been being a roofer for over 20 years and he doesn't have health insurance. He falls off a roof and he breaks a lot of bones in his collarbone area. I'm not even sure, to be honest, because he didn't have health insurance. He goes, he finds prescription opioids, he uses those for a while, manages his pain. Eventually he can't find those opioids, and then he turns to heroin because it's cheaper, it's easier to find. You can literally get it shipped to your house at this point. And so then, over time, he doesn't go to the doctor though, so then it turns into some other nerve issues, and then he ends up losing his vision and his eyesight. So now he is an addicted intravenous injection drug user. He is now dealing with mental illness of losing his eyesight, is in horrible pain daily because he cannot seek out medical attention, and now facing all this stigma and cannot go to work, you know? And so it's not just always people too who are looking to get high. It's people who are truly looking to get well and trying to just function and just trying to be alive. And you know, like I said, there's just so much stigma. And so I try to talk about that a lot too. Yeah. Yep.
Just what you were talking about farming out on the west side of Wisconsin, here it's been called Skittles Party.
Oh, okay.
So.
Skittles Party. That's new. Thank you. Any other questions or anything to add? Any other life experience people want to throw out there? Okay. That is all I have, so thank you for listening.